is News Conference Extra with Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to News Conference Extra, a special segment of Today in LA Weekend. With us, California Secretary of State Alex Padilla, the Chief Elections Officer for the largest, most populous state in the nation. Thank you very much for joining us.
Great to be back, Conan. It's showtime.
It is showtime. Recently, the intelligence community went to the House Intelligence Committee saying we have evidence that Russia wants to interfere in the U.S. elections, including the primary elections on the Democratic side. Was that news to you?
Maybe the formality of it could be considered news, but it's not really any surprise. Look, we go back to the 2016 election cycle, and the fact of the matter is they haven't stopped. There may be, increases and decreases in frequency of attempts to interfere with our elections, but they haven't stopped. So this comes as no surprise.
What assurances can you give the voters that your system is safe?
Well, I think there's two categories to think about this. Number one, is our elections infrastructure safe and secure? Yes, California leads the nation when it comes to security requirements on our voting systems to ensure that there's no hacking or rigging the results among them. We prohibit internet connectivity. Number two, we require paper ballots and a voter verified paper trail. And number three, every county has to conduct a post-election audit after every election. And as it is, California's security requirements exceed the nationally recommended standards. But I think the one that worries me a little bit more is a lot of the misinformation and frankly disinformation that we see online, not just about candidates, but about the voting process. So we encourage people, if you have questions about registration or voting, contact your county elections office or the Secretary of State.
We should point out that when it came to Iowa, to a certain degree in Nevada, those are caucuses run by the Democratic Party, not the state apparatus of elections. So what you do here is not even remotely related to how they do it there.
Right, very, very different. And I appreciate the question because it is on the minds of folks. I hear it every day. What happened in Iowa was a caucus, not an election. California will have a primary election. The caucuses, to your point, are administered by political parties. In California, elections are administered by elections officials at the county level, overseen by the Secretary of State. And what seemed to have gone awry in Iowa was a faulty app that was developed to report the results. In California, we don't use apps, not to cast ballots, not to count ballots, not to report results. As I mentioned, even our voting systems cannot be tied to the internet. So we're not going to see what happened in Iowa play itself out here.
1 out of every 4 votes in this state is cast out of Los Angeles County. We have a new county election system that's being unveiled on March 3rd. We talked to Dean Logan last week. Are you at all concerned about this, where it uses an iPad, sticks out a paper ballot after you voted on the device, and then you place that into another machine where it's eventually counted?
Look, I know there's some questions about a new voting system here in LA County, but I got to tell you, from the years and years that it took to develop this, the years and years of public comment and input on what the design should look like, and the rounds and rounds of testing and scrutiny that we put the new system in, I am more than cautiously optimistic. Not taking anything for granted, but I think we're going to be in pretty good shape.
You certified it.
We certified it with some additional conditions, and so let me lay out a couple of the key points for people to understand. I mean, as it is, more than 60% of voters in LA County are going to vote by mail this time, right? Between permanent vote by mail and requests for this particular election. So those folks get mailed to them a hand-marked paper ballot to mark by hand and return. For the folks who choose to vote in person, and that's a lot of people in LA County, the experience is better, not just because of the voting system, but the options under the Voters' Choice Act, right? 11 days of voting, 10 days early voting, plus election day itself. Any voter can go to any location in the county and with a more professional experience at every vote center. And I appreciate the distinction between these tablets. This is not electronic voting. This is not anything along those lines. These are ballot marking devices that folks can use if they choose to make their selections. It ultimately produces a piece of paper, and it's that piece of paper that is considered the ballot. The paper is what we cast. The paper is what we count.
When we have election night, March 3rd, there's going to be this anticipation to figure out who in the Democratic primary for president, who won the lion's share of delegates. You could have, and it's proportional statewide and by congressional district, 53 congressional districts. You could have results that we don't know for weeks because of the way you're counting late ballots.
I think that's the reputation California has for good reason. All right, we'd rather get it right and then get it fast. Not just the time it takes to count the raw number of ballots in California. You know, we're going into this election with record registration, 20.5 million voters on the rolls today and growing each and every day. That's more than the population of any other state, with the exception of Texas and Florida. So our volume is going to take a minute. Second, because of the policies that we have to allow vote-by-mail ballots, for example, to come in within 3 days of the election, if they're postmarked on or before Election Day, it's still counted. We have same-day registration at every polling place and every vote center in the state. And so it takes a little bit more of a manual processing to allow those votes to count. So it's going to be a couple of weeks before we get final numbers. We'll have a good sense on election night, but a few weeks for final numbers.
Last question, what is your biggest worry? What keeps you up at night?
You know, I have a lot of confidence and faith in elections administrators in all 58 counties. If I think about anything late at night, it's, you know, the bad information that people see online. Don't believe it all. Get your information from the trusted official sources of information, your county elections office, the Secretary of State. Go to vote.ca.gov.
Alex Padilla, the Chief Elections Officer for the state. Secretary, say thank you very much.
Don't forget to vote.
And good luck. Who knows? I may have already voted. A lot of people have. Thank you very much for taking the time. One of those individuals on the ballot is Jan Perry. She's running for LA County Supervisor District 2 when we return.